Council for December 20th, 2022. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance if you'd like to. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. City Clerk, may I have a roll call?
Humby.
Here.
Gabriel.
Here.
Harrington.
Here.
O'Doherty.
Here.
Schmeckel.
Here.
Schuster.
Here.
Somerville.
Here.
Pierce.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
That's 9 present and 0 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is public comment on non-agenda items. Do we have anyone for public speaking on non-agenda items? I believe we had a request. Just recognize Mr. Van Fleet, and when he is in the room. Mr. Van Fleet, you've got the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think as many of you know, I'm a local attorney here in town, and I've had the opportunity to represent a number of citizens here in Laramie on various issues. And as we come to the end of the year, you all are probably looking at your budget, much like I am. I wanted to bring something to your attention, and that is, if you look at the history of ordinance in this body, in 2016, the court struck down a DUI ordinance in which the city enacted an ordinance which enhanced the DUI penalties, finding that the ordinance violated the uniform application of traffic statutes and found it to be void. Recently in Bell versus Laramie, the court found that the rental housing code language of the ordinance as it was written was unconstitutionally vague. And now we have a right-of-way policy that was recently written, and I see now that it's on the resolution for today, but today we had a hearing on that, and the city's hired private attorney admitted that it was crafted in such a way, it wasn't narrowly tailored to meet the objective that the city wanted. Instead, it's broad, and it basically states that anybody who lives outside of the city is required to get an access policy, which I don't think was the intent of the city. And although I do make a living off of doing defense, I'm also a citizen here. And I'd be interested to know how much the city is spending to hire private attorneys every year to defend these poorly crafted attempts at ordinances and regulations. And I would make the suggestion, because each time they come to our desk, it's obvious to us what the issues are, that the city, when they want to pass an ordinance or a resolution that addresses constitutional issues, that maybe instead of hiring defense attorneys to defend against it, they hire a private attorney to review those ordinances and find the issues. Because I think, unfortunately, the lens which is these things have been looked at previously is narrow and is not allowed for a broad impact or broad review of the language. And so, just as a citizen, I would say, you know, we really need to stop defending bad and poorly written ordinances. Instead, maybe employ somebody who can write them or hire somebody, an outside source, to review them. And I think you guys would save a ton of money. I have no idea what you've spent on those 3 cases alone, but I'm sure it's astronomical given what my clients have paid to fight them. So thank you.
Further public comment, non-agenda items. Seeing none, close the public comment period. We'll go to item number 5. I'll call on the Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the following changes to the agenda be approved. We have 3 changes this evening. On the consent agenda, item 9LA, for our work session, we will be adding gun laws. On item number 9M on the consent agenda, we are appointing a member to the DDA. And on item number 22 on the regular agenda, we are moving into executive session. It's regarding litigation, Wyoming statute 16-4-405, lowercase a, Roman numeral 3.
Motion, is there a second on the motion for changes to the agenda?
Second.
There's a second, Councilmember Harrington. All right. Motion and a second from Councilmember Harrington. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand. Either way.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Vice Mayor Pierce.
Thank you. I move that the agenda be submitted as changed.
Same sign as before. All those in favor?
Second,
Aye.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Second, Councilmember Harrington. Thank you very much. And then with the motion and the second.
Aye.
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 All right. Any opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Just in a hurry, folks. Always, always, always. All right. It brings us to item number 6. Proclamations, public hearings, and notifications. We do have announcements tonight. And one of those, and I'm not entirely certain to whom I should turn this over, but this is the City Council recognition for council members who've been in service on this council and are not returning next year. And there are 3 of us, of which I am one. Who would like to speak now on this item?
Mayor, I believe that would be our city manager.
All right, let's call on the city manager. Thank you, City Clerk. City Manager Jordan.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council. And I would invite the clerk to assist me with this. And if you don't mind, Nancy, I'm going to grab the plaques. I got to run across the room. And if you would announce the 3 folks, I'll be right back.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. We did want to recognize our 3 city council members that will not be returning for the next term. And we wanted to make sure we thanked you for your service. As you know, now at this point, if this was your first term, or if this was your 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th term, this takes more commitment than what most folks realize. So we do thank you for your service to our community. So we have Fred Schmeckel, with 2 years of service from 2021 to 2022. We have Brian Schuster with 16 years of service from 2003 to 2011 and January 2011. And then we have another stint altogether from 2015 to 2022. And then we have Mayor Paul Weaver with 8 years of service from 2013 to 2017, 2019 to 2022. With Mayor serving as mayor from 2021 to 2022. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the city manager.
Thank you. Council, I apologize that I didn't have the plaques handier. Can you see that? Is it showing on your screens? Yeah, not on mine either. That's interesting. Well, we have lovely plaques here for all of you commemorating your service to the city. And I would say thank you so much for all the time that you've spent for members of the public. I just want to mention that our city council members not only put in the time, effort, and energy to attend these meetings and act as the governing body for the city, but our city council members also perform hundreds and hundreds of hours of service as elected officials, participating with other agencies in this city. There are some 20 boards and commissions that our 9 city council members serve as liaisons too, and they are attending those meetings as well as participating in a host of other discussions in the community about economic development, everything from economic development to the condition of the streets. So the hours and your investment of time is just so appreciated. We couldn't do any of this without all of you. And to Councilmember Schuster and to Councilmember Schmeckel and to Mayor Weaver, thank you so much. We really appreciate working with you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Hands are popping up. So we'll call in Councilmember O'Doherty.
I want to thank you for your service, and I've enjoyed working with all of you, even when I don't agree with you. Thanks.
Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to echo Councilor O'Doherty verbatim. That was exactly what I was going to say. And then Mayor Weaver, I wanted to just acknowledge your term as mayor through a rather difficult time as a city, challenging in a lot of ways, but I do think we accomplished as a council a great deal in the last 2 years. And so I wanted to thank you specifically for your leadership through the past 2 years.
It's very kind of you. Thank you. Councilmember Gabriel.
Thanks, Mayor. On a similar line of Councilor O'Doherty and Harrington, I know that Councilor Schuster has put in a lot of time, 16 years, and we really are in debt to all of his expertise, and we'll miss it as we go ahead. Councilor Schmeckel, thank you for your last couple of years. Been very valuable, and of course, Mayor Weaver, I know that, you know, in the past we worked together when I was on the other side in the county, but I think as Councilor Harrington has pointed out, these last couple of years have been a little bit difficult at times, but I think you have risen to the challenge and have really provided great leadership for this council. And I'm very proud of being a member of the city council and your performance as mayor, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Gabriel. Yeah, you and I go back a little ways. I appreciate those comments. I suppose we should ask Councilmember Schuster and Councilmember Schmeckel if they'd like to say anything just at this juncture. I think that's appropriate. Councilmember Schmeckel.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say that it's been a pleasure to be here, and it's been very humbling to serve, but none of this would be possible without the amazing staff of the city, including our city manager and our city clerk, who, let's face it, city clerk has to keep all of us cats organized. That's not easy. A gigantic thank you to her for all the efforts that she's put in the past couple of years.
Thank you. I saw Councilmember Schuster had declined to say anything. City Clerk?
Mayor, if I could also acknowledge in 16 years of service that Councilor Schuster has given the city, I'm sure the time away from his wife and family is very appreciated by the community. So I just wanted to acknowledge that part of his service as well.
I think that's appropriate. Well, as you all know, I'm never, unfortunately for all of you, at a loss for words. So I'll just say a couple of things. One of which is that it's amazing to me that there's approaching 30 years of council service between the three departing council members, 26 years. I think those comments about Councilmember Schuster's tenure are appropriate. I've served on a couple of different councils with him. And what I mean by that is, of course, council changes every 2 years, depending on who comes and goes. And usually there's at least one person going and a new person joining. And Councilmember Schuster and I served on a couple of different councils. He's been a steady presence on the city council and provided a historical perspective and a perspective of, frankly, just a member of a long time community family in Laramie that goes back in service in a variety of aspects and continues to today. And it will be a loss to the city council to lose that perspective and that experience. Absolutely. Councilmember Schmeckel, you have over the last couple of years, although it seems like 200 sometimes, given the nature of the last couple of years, frequently provided insight through your professional and personal experiences that have been helpful to this council. I will just say I am feeling more than fortunate that over these last few years, this has been the council that I have been able to be on. And as far as serving as mayor, I am fortunate that I was able to do that with you folks. And of course, I'm acutely aware of the many times when I haven't been able to do as good a job as I would have liked. And for that, I apologize. Thank you for your patience over these last couple of years. And I don't think anybody leaves this position without rightfully acknowledging our city staff, all the way from the city manager's office, the management team, and the department heads, down to everybody that does every other job for this city, because they're all incredibly important. They all count. And our employees, many of whom are not thanked on any kind of regular basis, are precisely why Laramie is a good place to live. They bring innovation, creativity, dedication, and professionalism to their jobs. And you don't see that any more clearly than when you do as a member of the city council. So I feel very fortunate in that respect as well. I don't think everybody gets to say that about municipal government, but I say that about the city of Laramie and our employees, and I mean it. And it's been a great experience, and it has been a challenging few years. No doubt it'll be challenging in the years ahead for different reasons. That's the world we live in. But I want to thank all of you for being here with me over these last 4 years, and the last 2 as well. So thank you very much. Very much. And city manager, that takes us to the next part of the announcements. Speaking of these employees, one of the things I like to do is hear these rock stars of the month updates. So over to you.
Very good. So, Mayor, I'm going to suggest that for our rock star, our employee of the month, it appears to me that she has not been able to join us tonight, and we expected this because she's traveling in Alaska. She was going to try to be able to log in, but because she is unable to, and I'm speaking of Wendy Club over in the recreation section, because she's unable to log in and I don't see her on the call, I wonder if the council would allow us to try to connect with her in January and take the opportunity to celebrate her late, a month after her recognition. Is that okay with you all?
That's fine. I'll say this because I won't be here. I always read the little newsletter, this Gem City Spark that comes to us. And it was interesting to read about Wendy and her background and all the traveling that she's done before she wound up with us here at the city of Laramie. So I think that's
absolutely
an interesting story. So
there is. So she is our December employee of the month, and we'll maybe have a chance to visit with her next month when she can be here. We do have a couple of other announcements tonight, Mayor, and I will let Todd Fieser talk to you about some events and activities going on in the Recreation Center, and then you can come back to me for some discussion of upcoming weather.
Thank you.
Thanks, Janine. Thanks, Mayor, for allowing this opportunity. First, I want to tell you about a few things going on at the Recreation Center during the holidays. Is we do have staff back, and we're able to extend some of the pool hours. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays between December 19th and January 1st, the pools will be open from 5:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m., as has been the usual before the pandemic. We'll also have extended Saturday hours and then some extended hours on Monday, and I encourage everybody to visit the website. Along with that, we've got 2 items that are going on the 26th. You still got a chance to come out and play some water polo and show off your water polo skills from 6:30 to 7:30. And then on December 27th, you'll have a chance if you want to go out and do the log rolling. We've got a log rolling item that kids seem to enjoy. So then that'll be in from 1 to 2:30. Another announcement at the Ice and Event Center last Saturday was Skate with Santa. I'm not sure if anybody made it to that. That 330 people skate that day with another 100 people watching. So they figured that about 440 people come through the event, and that was exciting for them. And then on December 31st from 10 to 2 is New Year Skate. So if you want to come in on December 31st and skate, $5 admission public skate at the Ice and Event Center and bring in the new year, hopefully wearing a helmet and being safe for us. But we'd love to see you guys at the Rec Center and the Ice and Event Center if you can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I had an email ping from Assistant City Manager Feeser just a minute ago with some extreme cold tips. It's in your inbox there, council members. City Manager Jordan.
Thanks, Mayor. We were just going to let the public know that we, of course, are receiving weather predictions of some very extreme temperatures starting tomorrow and through Thursday. The forecast indicates that on Wednesday we could see temperatures from the high of Wednesday to the low of Wednesday night through Thursday morning, deviating by about 50 degrees with an overnight low in the 20s, 20 below zero, I should say. So we will be pushing out some information for the public on how to protect the pipes, the water pipes in your house, and winterizing cars, and also protecting your pets by keeping them indoors. We encourage folks to visit the city's website and our social media outlets for some additional information about that. And if that weather does create any interruptions to city service, we'll be posting that in those same places, website and social media. And then, of course, pushing that information out to our press as well. So please be aware of that. It's going to be an interesting few days. It looks like we should be out of it. If the forecast holds, we'll be out of the cold weather by probably Saturday afternoon. And then, Mayor, lastly, I think the clerk had a quick update for you on our rental housing licensing and registration program.
Thank you. City Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to remind the community that the rental housing program is active. You can register your properties by visiting our website, www.cityoflaramie.org/rental housing. There is a link to a paper application. Some folks have preferred that over the electronic version. So if you get those turned in before January 1st, we'll go ahead and get those processed for you. If you have any questions, feel free to email us at clerk@cityoflaramie.org or call our office at 307-721-5220. Mayor and Council, one other quick part of that is we have 1,300 dwelling units registered at this time. So just to give you an update on where we are on that.
Thank you very much for that information and that update. And we appreciate those updates about the unusual weather we're having. I think I heard that, I don't know if this is true for the Laramie Valley, but in different spots in Wyoming, we're talking about record-breaking cold, at least since records have been kept, which is not insignificant. So check in on those city information pages for those updates, if there are any, and for those tips about staying safe over that cold snap. I think Wednesday night through Thursday night will be the worst of it, like the city manager mentioned, and then after that it starts to warm up. But it's going to be a little bit crazy from the cold weather perspective. Council, we're at item number 7, which is disclosures by city council members. Are there any members of the council that wish to disclose any conflicts of interest on anything coming before the council this evening? Council members, I will not be voting on item number 15 because I won't be here, and believe it's probably more appropriate to abstain from an item voting on the method and format of a meeting where I won't be participating. Are there any objections to that? All right, thank you very much. Then let's go to item number 8, Vice Mayor Pierce.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I move that the consent agenda be approved and that each specific action on the consent agenda be approved as indicated.
Second.
This motion and a second from Councilmember Cumby. Can we have a roll call on the motion?
Cumby.
Yes.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Harrington.
Yes.
O'Doherty.
Yes.
Schmeckel.
Yes.
Schuster.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes,
That's 9 yeses and 0 nos, Your Honor.
that motion carries. Thank you very much. That takes us into the regular agenda. Up first is item number 11, Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the Laramie City Council approve the professional services agreement between the City of Laramie, Wyoming and Winters Griffith Architects for the City Hall campus renovation and remodel project in an amount not to exceed $240,000 and approve a budget amendment in the amount of $165,000 and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign.
Is there a second for the motion?
Second.
Second from Vice Mayor Pierce. For background, we have Assistant City Manager Feaser.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, it's a pleasure to be here tonight talking about this. As you all know, the Public Works Division moved out of the second floor of the City Hall Annex, and over the past few years, we'd been working on some studies related to how the spaces would be needed to be used in the future. What this agreement does with Winter Griffiths Architects actually finalizes some of the schematic design processes and puts into play them helping us get to construction documents and then helping to bid out and get some of the projects done so that we can get staff into appropriate offices and address some of the shortcomings that we have with some of our city facilities. One of those things, most notably, it addresses how to provide better public services in centralized areas for safety of our facilities. And so we've got a lot of work to do, including working on the council chambers and other areas within the city. But we're excited to get this project going. It's going to be a fun project where we make about 62% of the people happy and the other 38% of the people not very happy. But that's a good percentage in my mind. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Assistant City Manager Feaser. I agree with the math. Do you have questions for the Assistant City Manager on the project? Yeah, Vice Mayor.
I'm wondering if we could have a little discussion or preview related to council chambers changes.
Yeah, Honorable Mayor, to you, if I can't, we're going to have to do a process where we bring in, whether it's a representative portion of council and the judge and how we're going to use that facility or not. So it's going to take some work, and that's part of what the architects are going to be charged with pulling together to try to make something that fits everybody's desires. Jamie Winters with Winters Griffith Architects is on the Zoom call tonight if he's got anything he'd like to add to that.
Yes, let's recognize. Jamie, I only have your first name because I missed it just now with the Assistant City Manager, so I apologize, but welcome, and you've got the floor to address the Vice Mayor's point. Jamie from Winters Griffith, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here. I was just trying to I had to switch over to be a panelist is what Zoom was telling me, but
Right.
Welcome. Thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council. Yeah, I don't have any lengthy discussion, but we're just looking forward to continuing our work with the City of Laramie and kind of get started with the project. So I certainly don't have any preconceived notions yet of what City Council chambers may or may not look like, but work with all of you and renovate that space for you.
Question from Councilmember Somerville.
Thank you, Mayor, and welcome, Jamie. I'm not sure if this is for you or for the Assistant City Manager, but could you talk to us a little bit about timelines? I have a particular interest in the council chambers, but just generally in terms of moving forward to do the steps we need to do for the entire project.
Honorable Mayor, through you to Councilor Somerville, I'd anticipate that the full project in and of itself is maybe 18 months to completion, depending on how we phase the project and what we're able to get done between now and then and how we'll work the different areas as they come into consensus that we're ready to make the changes that the architects are proposing.
Thank you.
Kind of sounds like we need to stay tuned for some of the specifics because there's more to come.
Correct.
Any other questions? Let me see if there's public comment on this item. If there aren't any more questions, you'll get another chance anyway. Seeing none, we'll close the public comment period. Council, one more chance. Jamie, thanks for taking time to be here and just give us a little bit of a preview about it. We do appreciate your time and you're joining us this evening.
No problem. Thank you.
If there aren't any further comments or questions for the Assistant City Manager or anyone else on the project, we will call for a vote. City Clerk, can we have a roll call?
Harrington,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Cumby,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 9 yeses and 0 nos, Your Honor.
Motion carries. Next up, item number 12, I'll call on Councilmember Schuster.
Second.
Motion and a second from Councilmember Harrington. All those in favor of the recess, say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
We are recessed to executive session, and we will reconvene the regular meeting at the conclusion of that executive session. Thank you.
Mayor, just of note for the public that are with us, if they just want to stay right here, we'll be back as soon as the executive session is complete.
Thank you. Councilmember Cumby, question?
Do we need to sign out from this session to sign into the other?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
we'll reconvene the regular meeting of the City Council for December 20th at 7:27 p.m. Councilmember Schuster.
Thank you very much. I move that we reconvene the regular meeting of the City Council and take action.
Second.
There's a motion and a second by Councilmember Cumby. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Yep.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. All right, that takes us now to item number 14, Councilmember Schuster.
Thank you very much. The title is Consideration of Development and Economic Incentive Agreement between the City of Laramie and Wyoming Home Base and Wyo Plaza LC. The goals of this is consistent with the adoption economic development objectives set forth within A, comprehensive plan, B, Thrive Laramie development strategy, C, primary retail trade area gap opportunity analysis, and D, Council's 2022 adopted goal number A2, consider and implement improvement program with the primary retail corridors to include public-private partnership. I move to approve the development and economic incentive agreement between the City of Laramie and Wyoming Home Base and Wyo Plaza LC and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign.
Second.
So motion and a second from Councilmember Schmeckel. Background with the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. So the agreement before you tonight will address what we have heard for many years consistently from our residents, asking for additional retail options and for the city to become involved in helping to secure additional retail opportunities for residents. I noted from our 2012 resident survey a literal statement submitted through that survey that said, get some major shopping stores so we don't have to shop out of town. When I looked at our most recent resident survey from 2 years ago, there were very similar comments. While we've been working very hard to attract retailers to the community, there's always room for growth. As you know, we've successfully partnered with a bunch of folks and the retail coach to help us to fill gaps in the community out on Grand Avenue. Tonight, this agreement would look to 3rd Street and the area where Kmart was for decades in Laramie, in the Safeway and Kmart shopping center on 3rd Street between Harney and I believe Bradley. I want to mention that we do have some folks with us tonight in the event questions come up. I mentioned our partnership with the Retail Coach. They are a consulting firm that the city has had a partnership with for a number of years. Carolyn Harrelson is here tonight. She's a retail recruitment specialist. And working with the Retail Coach, we were able to work with the owners of the shopping center anchored by Safeway and formerly anchored on the north side by Kmart. We have folks representing that property owner group here. Craig Erickson does development and leasing for Woodbury Group, and he is here. He may have some other folks as well. So if I can tell you a little bit about the work we've been doing with Woodbury for many, many years, we've been talking about how do we fill the Kmart building with retail options that are in line with what our residents have been asking for. A number of options have been vetted over the years, and ultimately tonight, Woodbury is here to talk to you about a couple of tenants that they believe they have secured. 2 businesses that will be tenants, and then also a 3rd business, Homebase USA, which will actually purchase from the current owner a portion of the old Kmart building. Homebase USA, Ross and Ulta then operating in that shopping center after the execution of this agreement. There is right now roughly 87,000 square feet of store frontage that sits unfilled there. And through this development and economic incentive agreement, we would basically form a public-private partnership to make improvements to the shopping center storefront, landscape, and parking lot, and welcome those 3 new retailers. The purpose of this, of course, is we want to reduce retail leakage to other states and cities, also do some rehabilitation and beautification of that area, and then just have more opportunities for shopping locally. The agreement would exist for a period of 10 years from the opening of the 3 stores. The city will be contributing an economic incentive based upon net retail sales of those 3 new retailers. All three of those retailers I want to point out were recruited because they filled gaps in current local product offerings. Those gaps are what cause residents to go outside of Laramie to acquire those goods, whether they buy them online or in our neighboring sister cities of Cheyenne and Fort Collins. Over the last several years, the retail coach has been tracking retail leakage for Laramie, and the proposed redevelopment here actually hits two of the highest categories of leakage that we see, and that is clothing and clothing accessory stores and home centers. And then Ulta hitting, I think, the fifth highest category, which was health and personal care stores. In total, in those categories, we are leaking to other communities some estimated $64 million in sales. With that, I would stand for questions and remind you that the property owner, as well as Carolyn with the retail coach, are here to help me field your questions, since I am a city manager and not a retailer.
Thank you, City Manager. Council, we've heard the invitation for questions. Questions for our guests? Yeah, Councilmember Harrington, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Carolyn, I'm curious if a 10-year term is typical for an arrangement of this sort.
Yes, I think that is very typical. I think that is very realistic. I think that is based upon what their lease agreement would be. And so we base an agreement of this sort on what the expectation is of what the city would get back long term, but also we have to take into accountability realistically what the property owners are expecting as for lease terms. And so we're saying to the property owners, hey, we're expecting that you're going to have this lease term with them for X amount of time, which is 10 years. But we're also having the expectation that we are going to get back from this agreement for 10 years. So it works both ways. So yes, based upon lease agreement, based upon a reasonable give back, provide back package, yes, 10 years across the board is average expectancy.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Other questions? Another question, Councilmember Harrington? Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if there's nobody else with the first round of questions, City Manager, I think one of the considerations that should be considered here is the return on investment for the use of public funds. And I'm curious if you can quantify for every dollar the city is investing in this partnership, what the return is.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, through you, Mayor, to Councilor Harrington. I would note that the property owner in Homebase and also in Woodbury, they will be making a significant upfront capital investment to get the shopping center just sort of rehabilitated and do the work that I mentioned previously. The city will, over time, over 10 years, participate in that through the incentive payment. And our return on investment analysis shows for every dollar of public funds that we contribute, we'll receive back $2.61, estimated based on the sales that these retailers have shared with us.
Thank you, City Manager.
And I do note that, as I said, Craig Erickson is here, Mayor, but also Mr. Woodbury is with him, who is the chairman of the board.
We appreciate their attendance. Councilmember O'Doherty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. City Manager, that return on investment, that's just like what the city gets as a municipality, like taxes that we expect to receive back. It's not, employment and that kind of stuff by other members of our community, right? You're just factoring in like the tax revenue gain. Is that what?
Yes,
right?
And through you, Mayor, Councilmember O'Doherty, that's an excellent question. I should have been more clear. That is looking only at sales tax recoupment. It does not include property tax, nor does it include that initial capital investment that these folks will make into their property to make it more attractive, which is a win for the community, of course, nor does that return on investment include estimated wages, jobs, or annual payroll. All of those things would be in addition to that return on investment for sales tax revenue or receipts.
Thank you.
And Janine, if I may, I want to interject also, in addition to what this is providing in sales tax revenue, also when national retailers, regional retailers, any retailers are looking at it coming to Laramie and really seeing what's involved in the community, if they drive past a development or just something that looks like retail is not happening, there's no synergy, there's no energy, it's not somewhere that they want to be, then they go ahead and pass it by. And so this is an investment in development, so future retailers see that the city of Laramie is open, you're willing, you're ready, and then once they see these national retailers, which these are big name retailers that Mr. Erickson and Mr. Woodbury have recruited to this property, when they see these national A credit retailers occupy in Laramie, then retail begets retail, money begets money, and more development will follow. And so it's an investment that you will see beyond just the sales tax.
Thank you.
Other questions? City Manager, I'd like to ask a question. I think it's worth providing a little discussion about how we determine gaps in our retail market in the community, which was referenced at the beginning. It may be painfully obvious, well, we don't have stores X, Y, and Z here, but can we talk a little bit about how the city, along with our partners in retail development, have identified some of these things that we think contribute to this retail leakage? I think that's probably prudent for us to talk a little bit about. So if you would, please.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to lob this one directly to Carolyn. Retail Coach did work with us to do all of the analysis and to quantify what is being leaked in terms of kind and in total cost. So, Carolyn?
I hope you excuse me. I had COVID last week, so it's a blessing that I am virtual and I may cough a bit, but I can quantify that, and I would love to send you all of the reports and all of the research that our firm has done on the leakage gap and category by category. So we can break it down by clothing, we can break it down by makeup, or cosmetics, we can break it down by footwear, we can break it down by grocery and all of the things. And I don't have those numbers in front of me, and I would love to share those with you, and I will certainly share those with the city manager, and she has them to share with all of you and the community after this phone call and after this meeting. But let me put it in terms for you like this. I also live in a college community. I live in a community that just recently, and is not a client of ours, incentivized a similar retail development. Ulta opened in the last month, Marshall's, Rack Room Shoes, a grocery store, and I'm probably forgetting something. I picked up my 10-year-old daughter from school this afternoon from her after-school program, and she said, "Mom, I need you to meet Carmen's mom at Walmart for us to pick out matching pajamas for pajama day at school tomorrow, because we're gonna wear matching pajamas." Well, we go to Walmart. There's nothing at Walmart. Well, then Carmen's mom says, "Let's go to Marshall's." So we go to Marshall's, we find some matching pajamas for our daughters, and then we walk to Ulta next door, which just opened, and my 10-year-old daughter, who I don't know how this happened, is suddenly into skincare, just added about $100 worth of things to Santa's list of skincare at Ulta. And so all that to say, I can give you the numbers, I can quantify the numbers, I can send you all of the reports, but you're in a college community and you're in a community where there is Amazon, there is Walmart 2-day shipping, there are all of the things where we can go online and we can order everything to be on our doorstep, or we can choose to develop in our community where we can buy it locally. And those tax dollars, that money, that employment, the people that check you out and you say Merry Christmas to, those are your community members. And so I can certainly, and the city manager can certainly share those reports with you, and I will send them to you after this call. But after this development, which my local community just incentivized recently, and again, they are not a client of ours, and just the impact that it has had. I mean, the parking lot is full. It is full with these national credit retailers. And if you drive by the Woodbury development right now, the parking lot most likely is not full, right? But if we put the money into just bringing this in, then you will see the leakage and where it would have gone. Because tonight, if my daughter had said, Mom, we need to get matching pajamas for Carmen and I wear tonight, and so on and so forth, I would have driven 20 miles away to where there was that regional hub of retail mom of the year, I know, to do that for her. So I think that's where we are today, and we can do it on Amazon, we can do it on Walmart 2-day shipping, or we can invest in our community to where our community members, our college students, everyone can do it in our own community.
Thank you very much.
I would point out too, I did include numbers for you in the cover sheet with just respect to these categories of retailers. And I didn't read those, but clothing alone leaks $22 million a year based on the retail coaches data, and home goods leaking $40 million a year to our sister cities.
If I may, I'd also like to address Councilman Harrington's question earlier to Caroline about, our typical leases are 10 years. And yeah, while they may be 10 years, most often these stores stay for 20 years, 30 years. I mean, they just continue to keep going. I don't know, Mr. Woodbury can talk to Ross, for instance. We've had several centers over the years, and we've never had one leave. And I can say the same for Ulta. So they're there beyond that 10-year period typically too.
Thank you very much for waiting and weighing in on that question. City Manager, the reason I brought up this line of discussion is it seems to me that in years past we've done some data collection about this, and we've had input from the community with respect to those kinds of retailers that they wanted to see, and I just couldn't remember all of the history there. But it certainly isn't simply a project that the city's entertaining out of convenience. This is something we've been working at for a while based on community input around what kind of retail groups we'd like to see. That's, if memory serves, that is the case. And that's been through a variety of inputs from city residents about what they'd like to see so that they didn't have to leave the community or didn't have to order it online. People like to be able to try things on and look at things and hold things in their hands. Yeah, e-shopping is super convenient, but you miss that part of it. I see that we've got Councilmember O'Doherty.
I just want to mention for the public's benefit that a lot of those numbers are in our packet with the links. And then from a previous, I can't remember when we had the work session talking about that leakage, and that would be a good resource. Maybe we could link it to this agenda if the city clerk wouldn't mind. It might be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for that point of information, Councilmember O'Doherty. So some of that information is available and some of that information can be found. And Ms. Harrelson said she could provide us with some other additional details. And I also appreciate that information about the length or the longevity of these folks in these spaces beyond the 10 years. I think if we were to go back 10 or 15 years, most of the folks that are in this development now, up until some recent changes, were all long-term folks that had been there over 10 years as well, up until just recently when we started struggling with some of those spaces. I think that's an accurate memory as well. Once folks get in there and get established, they tend to do well there, I think, for a variety of reasons. I'm not a retail specialist either, but I have lived in Laramie and observed that shopping center for some time. Any other questions? Let's see if there's public comment on this item, council, without objection. We have a request for public comment from Mr. Glass, Brett Glass. Let's let Mr. Glass into the meeting. You have the floor.
Mr. Mayor and members of council, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I've just quickly reviewed the contract that's in your packets, and it appears that what we're doing in this, and we need to think carefully about this, is giving the retailers who would move into the shopping center basically most of the sales tax revenue that we would get from these stores for a period of 10 years, which is quite a long time. Given the questionable success of such measures in other cities, I am wondering if indeed this is a good idea. Have we looked into what's happened in other cities when they've done this, and if it's been worthwhile, especially given the holes in our tax base that we have due to the university and other non-taxable properties? Is this the right way to go? Have we done the math on this? Thank you.
Other public comment or yeah, we have a request from Mr. Van Fleet. Let's let Mr. Van Fleet, you have the floor.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, kind of in response to Mr. Glass there, I do a lot of representation of real estate clients, and the very reason we haven't been able to get large retailers in is because there isn't already large retailers in. And so I think that I commend the city for trying to do this. And I think sometimes it's the cost of doing business. We may have to give away the tax revenue, but I think it will pay off hand over foot in the sense that other retailers will follow suit and will gain those tax revenues. Thanks.
Other public comment. Seeing no other requests for public comment, we'll close the public comment on this item. Council. Councilmember Schmeckel.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say that of all the deals I've seen in Wyoming about economic development, I'm liking this deal more than the others because of the terms that have been laid out in this. I know it's been kind of hard fought to get to this point, but I appreciate the efforts, the math that has been done. I think that the cost per job is phenomenal. And let alone bringing those access points to our citizens so that they can purchase things and we can stop losing the money to happen to other communities. I think that's very, very important to us. So I'm very pleased. I would encourage my colleagues to vote yes for this.
Thank you, Councilmember Schmeckel. Next up is Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I wanted to just acknowledge the efforts of staff and the retail coach in bringing this before us today. And then I think it's also worth acknowledging Mr. Erickson and Mr. Woodbury for being so thoughtful in selecting retailers to fit this development that matched well with our leakage reports. So I did want to acknowledge your efforts as well. And I do see this as a real benefit. I mean, I think we have all heard from our constituents, these are things they want. I think when you consider that on one hand, and then the fact that the city stands to gain significantly from our investment here, in my opinion, this is, the definition of win-win. So, Mr. Mayor, I'll be a yes vote on this, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have comments? Yes, Councilmember O'Doherty.
I want to point out that we did do the math, and as our city manager said, it's a $2.61 on the dollars invested. We're not just giving away all of our tax money. And there was a lot of math that went into it, and I'm grateful for the Woodbury folks and to the retail coach for bringing this solution to us. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Councilmember Cumby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank everyone involved and to acknowledge the work and the long-term commitment that has gone into this. I know it's been a lot of work. I think it has the potential to open up our North 3rd Street corridor and to help fill some of the empty buildings north of that, and to really revitalize that area of the city. I think with our new bridge right there, going over to West Laramie and West Side, that it's a great location, and the selection of stores are really exactly what I hear people say that they're looking for. So thank you all for the work you've done on this.
Thank you, Councilmember Cumby. Council members, have you had an opportunity to ask your questions and make your comments? City Manager, I have one last question, which was prompted by public comment, which is that I believe we've had the opportunity to look at several examples of similar efforts that have proven to be successful across different communities with similar arrangements. And I'm not sure about the time spans, but my understanding is that we have been able to look at and model this effort off of other successful partnerships that have functioned similarly. Am I correct in my recollection of that and the way this has sort of been put together and the research work that we've done? Can you touch on that just a little bit?
Yeah, Mayor, I'd be happy to. That is precisely why we keep the retail coach on a sort of small retainer, since they did the original gap analysis and leakage analysis for us now, I think 5 years ago. They bring to us, they help us to ascertain what is sort of customary across the country in structuring these kinds of deals and incentives and public-private partnerships. So that's where Carolyn and her her colleague Erin have been really instrumental for us. And so, yes, the answer to your question is absolutely yes. I've talked with my colleagues throughout the region in our Regional City Managers Association, and then we rely on the retail coach. And they, in fact, brought to bear some research from a couple different states, actually, Illinois being one of them, and I can't remember the other one off the top of my head now.
Thank you very much. Ms. Harrelson, did you want to add anything there?
Yeah, so, I was just going to echo. There were several communities that we looked at that have done similar incentive type packages. Some which we took from, some which we did not like, and so we really catered this to Laramie and what we thought was appropriate. And we worked with Mr. Erickson and Mr. Woodbury, and this has been months and months and months and months of back and forth, and us saying, you know, we don't think from the city's standpoint that this may be something that we would recommend that they agree to, and then the Woodbury team saying, you know, we can't make the numbers work from this end if this does not happen. And so it was certainly a mediation, but we certainly showed the Woodbury team where we had many communities where we looked at as examples, and where we are also working in for other examples. And so, yes, we looked at many communities, and this was not just a quick send back and forth. Okay, we agree to this. And I see my colleagues in the Woodbury offices laughing, because this has been many months, if not years, of discussions of, if this were to happen, what could the city agree to? What could they not agree to? And from the retail coach perspective, for the first year or two, excuse me, we actually were hesitant to even discuss incentives, but in probably the last 12 to 24 months, the national climate has changed a good bit to where incentives are becoming more of a discussion, and these national brands are looking to see where they can make the numbers work, especially as we look towards the uncertainty of the economic climate in 2023. And so I have utmost respect for the city manager for the work that she has put into this and crunching numbers after numbers after numbers, and the Woodbury team for hearing our many denials.
Go ahead.
No, Carolyn is correct. This is not what we asked for. We asked for a lot more. We didn't get it. But I do think this is a fair agreement, and we're grateful for this consideration. I will also add that Woodbury has owned this center for some time. We bought it originally thinking Kmart would go out of business much quicker than they did. They held on a lot longer, but and had COVID not intervened, I think we would have been able to bring this forward to you a little bit earlier, but COVID kind of stopped everything for 12 to 18 months. But Woodbury, like I say, we've been here a long time. With this redevelopment, we're hoping that we will be, to some extent, citizens of Laramie for another long period of time. We're a 103-year-old company, and we've got a lot of young people who want to make it a 150-year-old company. And we see this as a strategic asset for our future growth. Just like to add that.
Absolutely, Mr. Woodbury. I really appreciate those comments. I don't need to share with you that it's been disturbing to have that shopping center be in the state that it's been over the last couple of years, and it's certainly been, frankly, a negative presence in our community to have large empty store fronts in a really prominent part of town. So we see this as a must-do project, and we appreciate your partnership on it. I think I saw a council member, very much, we appreciate your partnership on it and your willingness to wheel and deal, so to speak. Let's see, we've got Councilmember O'Doherty.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that there's no tax revenue coming from that building right now where Kmart was. So that's another incentive. Thanks.
All right.
Well, I'm sorry, Mayor, if I may point out one more thing, and I think this was alluded to earlier, but one big thing is going to be that the city has approval of landscape and other improvements, facade improvements of the property, which I think is going to be huge for redevelopment along that corridor and along that side of town. Because once that starts to be fixed up and retail starts to kind of have some synergy over there, and they see what they're doing there, then you're going to see sign improvements, you're going to see landscape improvements, you're going to see facade improvements, just as a domino effect. And that was one thing that we really wanted to make sure was included in this agreement, because not only will there be some tax rebate incentives, but we wanted to make sure that there was going to be something that the city was going to have in return. And that's one of several things that we feel like Laramie will have in return.
Ms. Harrelson, we can point to other examples of these kinds of projects that have had these multiplier effects, right? That's why we know that those are some things that we can try to look forward to, is because we've seen it in other places. You've seen it in other places, and help put together this deal with that very much in mind. I think that's one of the reasons that I'll be supporting this, and other city council people will be supporting this, because it isn't about just this plaza. That's important, and we just talked about that, but it's the possibilities that it will hopefully ignite in some of the other parts of that commercial area. All right, we've had a pretty good discussion about this, but it's my charge to ask you, council, if you'd like to answer any final, or ask any final questions, or make any final comments. Seeing none, we'll just say this has been an interesting discussion. We're feeling hopeful about this. I believe you've heard that reflected in the council comments. I'll be supporting this, and Seeing no other requests for speaking or questions, City Clerk, I'd ask you to do a roll call vote on the item.
Schuster,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Cumby,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 9 yeses and 0 nos, Your Honor.
And that motion carries. I would like to thank our guests for being here and taking time out of their evening to spend with the City Council. We appreciate your time, and it was informative for us to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Merry Christmas.
A Merry Christmas to you all.
Merry Christmas.
Same.
Bye.
All right, Council, that's going to get us into item number 15. I'd like to call on Councilmember O'Doherty.
I move to approve resolution 2022-71, rescinding resolution 2022-02, requiring virtual meeting attendance and providing for hybrid meeting attendance on January 3rd, 2023, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign.
Second.
Motion and a second from Councilmember Harrington. Councilmember O'Doherty, you have the floor.
I'm just bringing this forward because the council-elect members were all looking forward to having the opportunity to be there in person, and our staff said they can handle the hybrid meeting, and so I wanted to give them the opportunity, at least for the first meeting, and then the new council can decide. Thank you.
Council discussion. Councilmember Somerville.
Thank you, Mayor. My only question on this is, City Manager, could you talk to us a little bit about the current state of the chambers? I know that there has been, that the dais was taken out, then there were desks, and then there were some other modifications. Can you tell us all where that sits right now?
Sure. Through you, Mayor, Councilor Somerville, we have, I think, completed the midterm improvements that would be necessary to bring you all back as we understood from the conversation some months ago now. The dais has been removed, but that's a permanent change. We do have the ability to configure the dais area to accommodate either city council meetings or municipal court. And as you know, you share that space with the municipal court and the municipal judge. So we now have the flexibility to modify the room more effectively to accommodate both of those uses. We also have just this week completed the installation of a wall to control traffic flow through the hallway into the council chambers through the public and the staff doors, and then also controlling the flow of foot traffic to the dais to where the council and or the judge sit. So I think we're ready to go. And then, of course, we've made the modifications to our heating and ventilation systems to up the fresh air intake and to up the number of full air exchanges. So we think we're in a really good spot to bring you all back. And if you have specific questions, I guess I'm happy to try to answer those. I'll admit, without the assistant city manager here, who has all the specifications in his head at all given times, you may get a better, more technical answer from him. But I'll pinch it for him.
City Manager, I believe the Assistant City Manager is with us. He had just unmuted, but then
he?
muted again, thinking he was going to get out of it. But I think Assistant City Manager, tell us all about it.
Yeah, actually, Honorable Mayor, I don't have anything to add from what Janine said. She actually touched on all the issues. We've made preparations for taking down court operations and setting up for council and being prepared for court operations to occur the following Wednesday if we have jury trials. So we're prepared for council to, in part, make a return to the chambers.
Thank you, Assistant City Manager. I know that's been a somewhat frustrating process with different opinions and changing environments, and also just trying to figure exactly what we wanted to do when we did return. So your work and patience with that is appreciated. Councilman, Councilman Somerville.
If I can ask a follow-up, Todd, can you describe, or Janine, a little bit about the technology that we're going to employ to run the hybrid meetings?
Or maybe the city clerk, Councilmember Somerville?
Or city clerk, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to refer that to Nancy, and I'm happy to back up as able. The one thing I will mention, Council, is completely unrelated to modifications to the chambers. We do have a change in personnel for videography, and that's just something that's occurring naturally, and we're working on that. And then, Nancy, you can talk about the hybrid technology as far as hosting an in-person and also a simultaneous video meeting.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So the equipment in chambers really hasn't changed much, but I think we've learned a lot throughout the pandemic. So we have the same audio system in there that we had previously. One thing we've learned throughout the pandemic is our Zoom meeting option actually works a lot better than our old phone system did. If counselors that have been on council for a while remember, when we had call-ins, it was a little hard to hear them, and things of that nature. With them coming through the computer system, it actually gives us better control of the sound, not only from the tech room, but also from the computer in chambers. So that has been an improvement for sure, having Zoom become a part of our lives. So we do have that benefit now. If we do have counselors in chambers, as you know, all counselors are issued a laptop. So once we get all of those issued and ready to go, we could have individual shots, shared, of each council member. However, we do still have the video equipment that would share the whole dais at the same time as well. So if that doesn't answer your question in full, please let me know and I'd be happy to answer.
Mayor, sorry if I can just ask clarifying question of the city clerk. So the question I have is, I know Councilor Schuster's in chambers a lot, and I think he's on his laptop, but I'm not sure, in particular for his video. But so do we have a system? I just want to make sure that we're tracking the people that are talking in the room really well, like a spotlight on them, as opposed to maybe just a shot of the whole room. And is that what you're saying we would need to set up the laptops for?
Well, before the pandemic, our video equipment does have that ability to zoom in on who's speaking. In past years, our videographers have been able to zoom in to that person and then display who's speaking. So for instance, as you were speaking, it would display Councilor Somerville. As Janine mentioned, we are currently going through a broadcasting change due to retirement. So we hope to get them up and running as quickly as possible.
Mayor Weaver, you're silent.
Patiently, and then I'll go to Councilmember O'Doherty after that. Go ahead, Councilmember Schuster.
Thank you. Tonight I am up here. I'm sitting in the middle. There are 3 tables up here. I guess I'm going to call them. They're small roll-around tables. All the chairs are back there. I hope the public can come in afterwards. Like they said, a security door has been installed in the hallway. It not only secures to up here, but it secures the counter for the court system out there too. We still have a walk-through spring-loaded door here, so to say that we're secure up here in the diocese, no. But that has been changed. I teach 608 refrigeration, heating and cooling. So what was installed here was called a makeup air handler. I checked on it through Finance Committee when you were there, Paul Weaver, asking exactly what it was. It brings in fresh air from outside, heats it, cools it depending on the time of the year, and then brings it into the building. It is larger than the older one, so we have about 15-20% more air coming into the building to push out, I'm going to call it old used air, would be a statement. We do have, I've seen 2 different air purifiers in the building to purify the air. If you come in and you use your laptop speaker and mic need to be turned off because they will interrupt it. So anybody that comes will be issued a portable microphone. Just trying to update people on what's in here and what's not in here. So that's, if anybody's got any questions about attending here, they're sure welcome to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Doherty?
I personally didn't see the need to be zooming up on our faces like we do in Zoom. We didn't have that. I mean, it would be like that side of the dais and things. So to me, that's not as much of a concern. That it could just be a pan of the whole chambers if we don't have a videographer. If we have a videographer, I guess, you know, you're on the spotlight. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Doherty. Councilmember Schuster, did you want to speak again?
Yes, will the general public be allowed in the building?
I don't know. Who knows the answer to that question?
I didn't specify, but I guess I could make an amendment.
City Clerk, information, please.
Mayor, I was just bringing up the resolution here to read how it's exactly stated. And it says council members may attend this council meeting in person or by telephone. It does state in 3 city staff, invited guests, and the public may attend city council meetings or work sessions in person or by telephone or web conference. So it does give the public the option to join us on January 3rd.
Thank you very much, City Clerk. That answers the question. City Attorney, I saw that you had raised your hand. Did the City Clerk address the points that you were going to address for us?
She did. The answer is yes.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or discussion about the motion? Councilmember Cumby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had one other question. Oftentimes, with a room or a space, there's a person capacity limit, and often I see that as being designated by the fire department and fire hazard. I'm wondering, with this new HVAC, is there an estimate of capacity there where it's most effective at providing proper ventilation to the room? And is there any consideration for that if we continue to experience issues with the triple epidemic thing going on? Would you maybe want a limited number and exchange those, or because I've seen times when it's standing room only in the hall and out the door. So thank you.
Mayor, I'll do my best there through you,
Please.
Councilmember Cumby. The fire marshal did calculate capacity for the room as he would, like you say, for every public space. I don't believe any consideration is given to the heating and ventilation systems capacity in that regard, and I would stand corrected if the assistant city manager wants to tell me I'm wrong.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, City Manager Jordan is not incorrect in the statement. The HVAC system is designed per square footage in the rooms and takes into account all capacities and did before this. This new system is, like as indicated, is a little bit larger and a little more functional as it's brand new, giving us better return air. One of the things that did affect capacity in that room was basically, in effect, the security door that we put in did remove one of the exits. So the capacity in the room is actually a little bit less. I can't remember what Dennis Johnson, the fire marshal, had told me, but I think it was in the low 40s. Nancy, if you can remember, was it in the low 40s?
I'm not sure that I heard Assistant City Manager. I'm sorry.
Okay. And then one other thing to keep in consideration is we can have people flex in and move in and out of the room as it goes, but I do believe that we'll be okay for most meetings. There's some meetings we simply won't be able to adjust for the capacities in.
Councilmember Cumby, any follow-up?
No, thank you very much. That answered my questions.
Councilmember Cumby, I'd like to invite you to make a comment on this part of the discussion because you touched on it earlier, which is that we're still in a somewhat precarious place regarding community health. Do you have, and I hope council, no one will object to this, do you have any inkling through your committee assignments right now of the levels of COVID and flu circulating in the community at this time as the council considers returning to in-person meetings?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Currently, as you know, with home testing and because of vaccination, many individuals who do get infected with COVID have minimal symptoms. Our risk level that is reported is based on hospitalization, on individuals who are hospitalized who turn up positive, and not necessarily on the numbers of people who get infection. So right now, our risk levels have been relatively low. Our vaccination rate remains, for the first two vaccinations, remains around 60%. Our fourth booster, the bivalent booster, remains extremely low, around 10%. And the two key preventative measures for for fighting COVID is vaccination and ventilation right now. And the tracking is, we're not able to track the number of infection. But in our wastewater, we've had a few spikes. Usually when there's, we just had a spike subsequent to graduation. So anytime we have a large group swell of individuals in the city, it goes up slightly, but we have not had a significant spike. We have not also had the type of overwhelming surge in pediatric RSV in our hospital that they have seen in Denver and other places. So I just think it behooves us to be aware that it seems to be a significant flu strain this year. There is RSV out there, and COVID. 1 in 4 people get COVID will have some long-term symptoms from that. So there are things that we just need to be mindful of, and to use the cautions that we can. And I would just encourage people to get vaccinated if you have not already, or to speak to your care provider about that.
Thank you very much. It does seem like that should always be a part of this discussion. It's a relevant part of this discussion. Further comments and questions, input about this before we go to public comment, if there is any. Councilmember O'Doherty, you'd had a hand up a few minutes ago, but maybe you've changed your mind.
I was wondering, that air handler, it's not just council chambers, right? Because it was a giant thing that went on the building with a giant crane. So I assume it's like, so if we had overflow going into the downstairs like we've done in the past, I guess we wouldn't have that. Anyway, I assume this air handler's handling more than just council chambers. Am I right? Thank you.
Honorable Mayor, through you to Councilor O'Doherty, that's correct. It was full City Hall air handler, and it's actually 2 air handler units. which gives us redundancy in case one of them goes out, we still move the air that we need to.
We'll open public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, we'll close the public comment period and return it to the council for any final questions or thoughts before we go to the vote. City Clerk, roll call, please.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Cumby,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Abstain.
Schuster,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Abstain.
That's 7 yeses, 0 nos, and 2 abstentions, Your Honor.
And that motion carries. That'll take us now to item number 16. And for item number 16, I've got Vice Mayor Pierce.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve Resolution 2022-74, appointing 2 council members, Councilor Somerville and Councilor O'Doherty, from the city of Laramie, Wyoming, to serve as city council liaisons to the Finance Committee for the January 3rd, 2023 regular meeting, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign.
Is there a second?
Second.
A second from Councilmember Cumby. Director Wade, welcome.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Councilors. As a matter of brief introduction, we have a need for 2 members of the continuing council to serve on the Finance Committee to approve December vouchers and disbursements. So as you may realize, governing body of disbursements is actually required by state statute, and the Finance Committee is the arm that enacts that review. And so this is a really important appointment, even if it is for just one meeting. We have this need because 2 of our outgoing council members were on the previous Finance Committee. And so that's why it's just a 1 meeting appointment. And with that introduction, I will leave it for council discussion.
Thank you very much, Director Wade, for the explanation. Yes, council, you need to have some folks on the committee for that January meeting. Questions or discussion? Why don't we see if there's any?
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Councilmember O'Doherty.
To be clear, it's the mayor and Councilor Schuster that are on the committee now that will be leaving. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, why don't we see if there's public comment on this item? Seeing no public comment, council, back to you. Yes, we will not be available for that meeting. Our terms will be over. Seeing no further comment or questions, City Clerk, can we have a roll call vote on the item?
Somerville,
Yes.
Schuster,
I'll abstain this time.
Schmeckel,
I'll also abstain.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Cumby,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 7 yeses, 0 nos, and 2 abstentions, Your Honor.
The motion carries. Let's go now to item number 17. Councilmember Schmeckel, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve original ordinance number 2053 on 3rd reading, amending the definitions and enforcement procedures of the Laramie Rental Housing Code.
Second.
Second from Vice Mayor Pierce. For background, Welcome to City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As I've said before, this amended ordinance or amendments to the ordinance you pass have nothing to do with the substance of the ordinance. They're to address a couple of procedural matters that were addressed by the district court judge in litigation. Those two matters that we've addressed here have to do with making it clear that the city manager does not enforce or punish people under the ordinance. The city manager just manages the process where disputes are tried to be settled before court, and that the actual enforcement, if it's necessary, occurs a prosecution in municipal court. I've also got a recommended motion to amend, as you see on the cover sheet, which is to add the words, essentially an amendment that says that the prosecution is against the owner of the dwelling unit. That I don't think was necessary, but I'm sensitive, as you are, to issues that have been raised by property managers saying, my goodness, am I liable for something that the owner does? And that makes it clear that they are not. So I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, City Attorney. Any questions for the City Attorney on the explanation about the amendments? Council discussion on the amendments. Councilman Schmeckel.
Mayor, I'm ready to make that amendment here this evening if you're ready.
Councilmember Schmeckel.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to amend original ordinance number 2053 by adding the words against the owner after the words criminal information in section 8.80.040, section G, paragraph 3.
Second.
Motion and a second from Vice Mayor Pierce that time. Discussion on the motion. Go to public comment on the motion. City Council audio check. I'd like to ask you about an audio check. How's the sound?
I think we're getting feedback from Bob.
Okay, that's all right. City Attorney, it's okay. You're just trying to do your job, and here we are complaining. All right. Public comment. Request for public comment from Brett Glass. Let's have Mr. Glass join us in the meeting. You have the floor.
Mr. Mayor, I actually did want to comment on the main motion, but one thing I wanted to find out about, generally the agent, if you have someone managing the property for you, winds up having being authorized to serve as you. Sometimes they even have power of attorney. I'm concerned about whether this, even if there was an action taken specifically against the owner in this change, if it wouldn't cause problems for a property manager, and that property manager might therefore decline to manage some properties. So through you to the city attorney, what do you think?
Mr. Glass, you know we don't do the back and forth, but perhaps there will be an opportunity to get that question answered in the discussion, as you know. Thank you very much. Other public comment. Seeing no further requests for public comment. Council discussion or questions on the motion to amend. Councilmember O'Doherty.
We're bringing this up because some realtors or property managers were saying that they see a need for a correction and owners aren't willing to do the thing. And so they don't want to be responsible for that. And if I were that property manager and an owner doesn't want to do the thing to make a place safe, then I would probably stop working for them. But anyway, so this is to make it clear that it's the owner that's ultimately responsible. So I'll be voting for this. Thank you.
Other discussion? Other questions, comments? It seems to me, based on the explanation that we heard, Council, that this amendment is to be precise in who is ultimately responsible if it should come to pass that a complaint makes it all the way to the court process, and hopes to add a measure of reassurance about the protection of property managers working for owners in some capacity with the rental. And of course, they're still free to make whatever decisions they might want about what clients, what folks they work for, and what services they provide those folks. And this language just seeks to be as clear as possible about owner versus owner's agent, is my understanding. City Clerk, can we have a roll call vote?
Humby,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 9 yeses and 0 nos, Your Honor.
Motion carries. The amendment is added to the main motion. Back on the main motion, discussion, questions. Councilmember Schuster.
Thank you very much. Some people asked me some questions. I said I would rather have them answered online instead of me trying to use my memory. Don't know who this question should go to, but I believe this ordinance was patterned after one out of Oregon. Is that correct?
I believe so.
And then I have a follow-up question. If my memory serves me correct, Oregon did not have an item on egress windows. That was added to here after we brought it forth when the city itself decided they wanted to add egress windows to it. Would that be correct?
That I don't know, Counselor. I never looked at the Oregon ordinance to figure out what it said. That had been modified to a version of what you see now when it came to my desk. And so I can't answer that question. Perhaps somebody else on staff can.
That was my recollection, so I just was gonna go with it, and if the staff doesn't wanna come back on that, I will accept it the way it is.
Councilmember Schuster, maybe staff can have some time to get back to you on that and provide you an answer in the next couple of days about the inclusion of that. Councilmember O'Doherty.
I just want to say, I know it's one of the things that I'm most passionate about. And when we talked about bringing up this ordinance in the first place, keeping people from burning in basements is one of my main reasons, because I've seen too many unsafe basement apartments. Thank you.
I can speak somewhat to the question regarding patterning of the ordinance off of one from a municipality in another state. The largest reason for that was the council manager form of government requires certain kinds of structures to ordinances that another municipal government system may not. And you can certainly research regionally or across the country municipal rental ordinances that regulate the practice and business of rental property operation in communities. There are many different versions of them. Some of them are substantially strict, more strict than the one that the Laramie City Council has worked on over the last period of time. And some of them fall in between, but there are a variety of them nationwide. as there have been for decades. Questions or comments about the main motion, council members? Public comment on the main motion. Public comment request from Brett Glass. First, we'll let Mr. Glass into the room, and then we'll go through the list in order. Mr. Glass, you have the floor.
Yes, Honorable Mayor and members of council, I've spoken to you at length at other meetings about the various serious problems with this ordinance and with the rental housing code that it modifies. Tonight's your final opportunity to set things right, so please indulge me one more time, and please be tolerant if I run slightly over, though I'll try not to do that. Well, the modifications to this ordinance are unfortunately a bit sloppy. As mentioned by the attorney who spoke to you at the beginning of this meeting, council really needs to have the language of ordinances reviewed carefully by someone who knows how to write ordinances that are clear, sensible, and constitutional. But this ordinance has problems. The changes start right out of the gate with a definition that defines a suspected violation as a violation. Not only is this circular and therefore invalid, but it's reminiscent of the words of Ed Meese, President Ronald Reagan's Attorney General, who once said, "Of course they're guilty, they're suspects. If you're suspected of violating, you're violating it." The definition then goes on to include procedural language that doesn't even belong in a definition. There's sloppiness like that throughout this ordinance, which revises the rental housing code. The modifications also failed to satisfy the concerns of Judge Tory Cricken, who noted that the original ordinance confused civil and criminal matters. It still does, because it defines a dispute over whether the terms of a civil contract are being fulfilled as a criminal matter. It also violates the International Residential Code. That code specifically says that egress windows are not required to be added to existing basement units, even if those units are being renovated. And so the ordinance is in conflict with not only with state law, but with the city ordinance and the International Residential Code that we have adopted elsewhere. So all of these things are more than likely to provide fodder for yet another lawsuit, and we'll have, if it goes through as is, it could waste a lot of city money on that. The ordinance also doesn't allow for the most reasonable solution to the egress window issue in existing Laramie buildings, because it doesn't provide for an egress ladder to be placed inside a basement unit when the windowsill is at grade, as it is in the majority of Laramie properties. I've checked with several contractors here and in other places, and they agree that allowing this would be far more practical and less expensive than requiring excavation, and also much safer. You'd also get much greater compliance. If you do it that way, there's no pit that people or animals can fall into, and you climb up the ladder indoors rather than encountering a possibly wet or icy ladder outdoors. But right now, your current language doesn't allow for this better and safer solution, and I'd like you to consider doing that before you pass this. Here, unfortunately, as it stands, here's what's likely to happen if you approve this ordinance tonight as is. At most, a couple of thousand rentals, maybe 20-30% of those that exist here in Laramie, are going to be registered and licensed by the city. Some landlords are going to try to fly under the radar. Others won't even have heard that it exists. Others will simply refuse to register. Others will take units off the market rather than spend thousands of dollars to conform to requirements that are financially infeasible. Landlords who conform to the ordinance are going to be penalized. Those who don't will be difficult to locate because the city has no right to trespass to search for units that aren't being reported. Now, we talked about this a little bit before. Licensed real estate brokers who work as professional rental property managers may refuse to serve as agents for out-of-town owners because even if an action was taken against the owner, they're the agent. They're going to have to deal with being served with court papers and other legal hassles, and they may not want to take on that responsibility. So again, those units could be taken off the market for lack of a local agent or managed by owners who continue to do so under the radar. Now, if this happens, if those units go away, many tenants will be evicted or their leases will be failed to be renewed. My family's lease, like most of them, allows us to cancel the lease on any property whose leasing is prohibited by a government agency, and we don't want to do this. I don't think we would have to. I hope we won't. But we might if the city somehow found fault with something that we were doing. So what we're looking at here is a shortage of affordable units because, and especially in the case of basement units and with egress windows, it's going to hike. There are going to be fewer of them. It's going to hike the rents on the remaining ones due to large expenses. And the people who are going to be hit by this are the people who are financially disadvantaged. Some of them could be displaced altogether, become either homeless or move out into the country, into the county beyond the reach of the ordinance. Now, if I were a builder, I wouldn't develop new housing in the city, which council has said that it wants. I would probably build in the county where I didn't have to deal with all of this new regulation. Now, also, because the renters are going to move out of town or leave altogether, we're going to impact economic development. We're going to see a loss of property and sales tax revenue. None of this is going to be good, and all of these impacts are unnecessary. So I'd like to ask that you either vote this ordinance down tonight or at least postpone action and consider some of the things I've mentioned just now, specifically making egress windows less expensive to do. There's nothing wrong with having a way to, and I've looked at a couple, at having the ladder inside rather than outside to keep people from having to dig pits, potentially hit the water table, have huge expense dealing with their foundations. I think that might be a better solution. And again, think this through. We don't want to do any harm, and we don't want to go against the goals that City Council has already stated for affordable housing and economic development. So please consider that before you take action tonight. Again, please either postpone or vote it down. Thank you very much.
Moving on to our next public comment. Mr. Van Fleet, welcome, you have the floor.
Mayor, City Council, I don't always complain. It just seems like, it may seem like I do a lot, but I not always. I just wanted to bring up that since the district court found that the ordinance was unconstitutionally vague, I've heard from probably more people than I would like at times about this whole ordinance. And the three things that I've heard the most about, I think you've addressed two of them in some form. And the first being concerns from realtors that the complaint was being brought against them personally, which then would pretty much force the realtors out of the market of managing property entirely because nobody wants to go to jail or be penalized. So I think the amendment that's brought forth is an excellent one and will allow for clarification. The second issue that I've heard from a number of people is about the ingress-egress window. And I see that one of the amendments on the agenda tonight is about extending that period, which I also think is a reasonable solution, although it may not make everybody happy. The third issue, which I hear probably more than the other two, is the requirement that the agent or the owner attest that the unit meets the requirements of 8.80.030. The comment I get from folks is, I'm not a licensed contractor, so how do I know if it meets the building code, etc. So I think it's great progress. I still wonder if it will be legal and constitutional as applied, but that's yet to be seen. But I do appreciate the work that council has made, and would encourage you to continue to make modifications to meet to address constitutional issues as they may arise in the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Public comment is open. Yes, we'll recognize Mr. Borgard. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I sent through an email to the Council regarding some concerns that I had with the ordinance, and I hope that Council had the opportunity to read through that and appreciate the time of those who did do so. I do want to say that I see several amendments on the agenda tonight that do address some of the concerns that I had, and so I am appreciative to see some of that. Since the discussion regards some amendments to definitions, one of the items in that letter that I'd like to address is that of the definition of rental housing, and specifically that of item D, and just ask for some clarification and reasoning as to why the university is exempted under that definition, especially when they offer residential properties that are identical to those that property owners are offering, that those property owners are subject to the ordinance. And so just trying to get some clarification as to why it seems as though the university is exempt from that under the definition as written.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll see if there's an opportunity to address questions after public comment has been taken in total, which it may be. Public comment is open. Seeing no further requests for public comment, we'll close the public comment period. Okay, back to the council for questions and discussions. Councilmember O'Doherty.
I just want to say one reason I personally am not as concerned about UW is I know exactly how to find the owner. I know how to get things done. We have, when I asked the assessor this, when we first started considering this ordinance, I asked how many residential buildings were owned by out-of-state owners. And at that point, there were 1,250 residences that are owned by out-of-state people. I would love if those people decide this is too much hassle and put their house on the market, because we have so many people in Laramie that want to buy a house and there aren't houses on the market. So I just want to address those couple issues. And again, those 1,250 out-of-state owners, they're not our constituents. There's more renters in Laramie than there are landlords, and a lot of the landlords don't even live here. So thank you.
Further comment, discussion, and questions? City Attorney, I'd like to ask you a question. My question is this: if in the next year there were a bunch of private companies that started operating private parking lots and parking garages in the city of Laramie, and the council decided that we wanted to regulate that business activity because we may have heard concerns from constituents about the way those were being operated, the conditions, how their cars were being looked after, et cetera. So the council decided to pass an ordinance to that effect. I would guess that we would exempt the University of Wyoming's parking facilities, parking garages, and parking lots from that for the same reason that I believe the council has opted to exempt the University of Wyoming's property, notwithstanding the comments that we just heard, but it's that the University of Wyoming and its accessory operations and facilities are a state agency and function under a different relationship with the city of Laramie than private business. And that's why it would be the same in my hypothetical as it is in this situation. Is that a reasonable construction for me as a member of this council to make? That in fact the university operates in a different sphere, and we have a different relationship with the University of Wyoming and their operations?
Yes. I think that's an extremely complicated topic, which we butt up against as we both cooperate and try to, work on the relationship with UW. But certainly there are any number of other considerations that come into play when you're trying to regulate a state entity. So
I appreciate that. Good enough for me. Thank you, City Attorney. Other questions or discussion? Seeing none. City Clerk, can we have a roll call vote?
Schmeckel,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Cumby,
Yes.
Schuster,
No.
Somerville,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver. I'm sorry, Mayor, we couldn't hear you.
I apologize. My vote is yes.
Thank you, Mayor. That is 8 yeses, 1 and 1 no, Your Honor.
That motion carries, and that takes us to the next item. Thank you, Council and City Clerk. That takes us to the next item on the agenda. It's item number 18, and I'd like to call on Councilmember Cumby, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the Laramie City Council approve Resolution 2022-73, amending the implementation schedule adopted in Resolution 2022-16 for the Laramie Rental Housing Code, enrolled ordinance 1802, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign.
Second.
It's a motion, and is the second from Councilmember Schmeckel? Sorry, where was the second from?
Gabriel, Your Honor.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Gabriel. All right. We have the city manager for background. City Manager Jordan, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So the resolution in front of you was prepared to amend the implementation schedule that you adopted earlier this year, and it would replace that schedule in Resolution 2216 with the schedule that you see in the draft resolution. Effectively, what it would do is delay the full implementation of the section of the Rental Housing Code pertaining to sleeping room emergency escape or egress. Would delay full implementation of that section only until January 1st of 2025. From an administrative standpoint, we envision allowing our owners of rental properties in the community to register their rental units under 3 areas of consideration. The first would be that they register their units noting that they meet the code in its entirety. Second category would be that they could get those rental units registered if they don't meet the code, but they can give us a date certain that they indicating they will in fact meet the rental housing code habitability requirements by that January 1, 2025 date. And then we have this third category, and we're working through that already with many property owners in the community, and we expect that we will continue to work with this third group. And these are folks whose rental units don't meet the code, and for some reason, whatever the circumstance may be, they think they are unable to meet the code. In that third category, we would handle that administratively by making contact with that owner, talking to them about the reasons they believe the code can't be met, potentially looking at the property, going in with them, and working with them to identify alternative solutions. As we work through that process, we may be able to identify options for modifications to the code. And I think this gets to what you've heard from a number of folks who've come to talk to you. Everybody has a lot of ideas, right? But every property is different, and each of those ideas may or may not pertain to any property that's in question. So we understand it and have understood from the beginning, there are going to be a group of properties that are going to be problematic, and we're going to try to work toward some improvement there for egress that we think is consistent really with the purpose of the code as we understand it, and that purpose being the reasons that you've adopted it, to improve safety of people who live in leased residential spaces. So anyway, that's partly what, that's not partly, that is entirely why we are asking for the delay of implementation to give 2 more years for people to work through just that egress piece of the code. We would expect the remaining pieces, simple things like smoke detectors to be installed. All of those other sections would be applicable, and we think this 2-year extension will give our owners a viable time and staff a viable time to work through the issues and work with property owners on design and engineering and materials, and allow them time to get contractors lined up and get permits in place through the building department to make those modifications in those areas. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Our assistant city manager, who of course oversees the code administration office, is here as well, and we will be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, City Manager. Assistant City Manager Fieser, is there anything you want to add now before we get into questions?
Not at this time, Mayor.
Thank you. Questions? Questions or comments for our staff people? Councilmember Somerville, and then I'll go to you, Councilmember Gabriel, next.
Thank you, Mayor. City Manager, in terms of the timeline, I understand, and I've certainly received a lot of those comments as well. And, you know, just concern about how to financially bankroll getting egress windows on and contractors and all of those concerns. But my question is really focused on the timeline. In terms of trying to get the rentals in shape, is it feasible to back that up to July 1 of 2025 to put it more on par with our typical rental season and our student population that moves in August?
I'm just kind of thinking off the cuff here. I think it's possible, Councilor Somerville, through you, Mr. Mayor, but I do think that the ordinance allows for licensing and registration to be on an annual calendar year basis. So that is where we've derived January 1st from. Folks are registering for a calendar year, not a fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Councilmember Harrington. Oh, I'm sorry. I've got Councilmember Gabriel next. Councilmember Harrington, please. Sorry, Councilmember Gabriel, go ahead.
Yeah, just a comment. Thanks, Mayor. I think that this is a very difficult situation for many people, and I think this bottom line on the sheet from staff says it all about the 2-year extension is a viable amount of time for owners to acquire the needed design, engineering, materials, contractors, and permits to complete the installation of, you know, the emergency escape and sleeping areas and meet the code. So I just want to commend the staff. I know it's very difficult for a lot of people to come up, and I like the idea that this extension, and I certainly see where Councilor Somerville is coming from. I would certainly support something like that, but I think the 2-year extension is something that I would like to see go forward, and I just commend the staff for, you know, having that flexibility for people that, you know, might not have the money and the time and the, you know, the needed contractors to get this done. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilmember Gabriel. Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me. City Manager, would a property owner need to register now ahead of the January 1 deadline to be eligible for the extension?
That's a great question also, Councilor Harrington, through you, Mr. Mayor. And yes, that ordinance that you passed, it does say that we will be enforcing effective January 1 of 2023. Only by complaint, however. Let me put that out there because I know that gets folks worked up. But to give you an example, first of all, we're not suggesting that the enforcement date of implementation be so. Let's say in February, a tenant has a concern and they lodge a complaint with the city. First thing we'll do is we'll look to see if that property owner has been registered and licensed with us. Let's say the tenant's complaint is, I don't have an egress window in my sleeping room. Then we would pull that property owner's license and registration. And if they had attested that it wasn't there, or that it is there and it's not there, then that's a different situation. But it could well be that they've been licensed and registered, having self-reported, I don't have the egress in the sleeping room yet, but I'm scheduled to get it done in the summer. We will issue that license for that year and then check back to see that or we issue a new license in the following year. Does that make sense?
It does, City Manager, and I think, you know, we considered in the ordinance there is a contemplation of penalties for. I think one public comment mentioned folks may just not register, and so there is a contemplation of that. That penalty that you may incur for not registering. But I do think this might be an additional reason to register. So I wanted to ask if that played in, and I appreciate that. And then, Mr. Mayor, if I could, just by way of a comment, I just wanted to express my appreciation for this amendment to the enforcement schedule. You know, I know you're tasked with sort of walking a fine line here between the value that the council has placed on egress windows in sleeping rooms and the reality of the implementation schedule. So I do think this walks that line well, and so I just wanted to acknowledge that and say thank you.
Councilmember Cumby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say that I think adding the part 3 piece about that if they do not meet code and believe that it may be prohibitive or impossible, that there's more of a collaborative approach established where possible other solutions can be explored, which with an adequately sized window may include a ladder or something, but that together, looking at the safety, there is a chance of some sort of alternative. And I think we all want to be safe. And I appreciate that that expertise would be made available in certain circumstances. So thank you very much for that.
Other comments or questions? City Manager.
Mayor, if I can make one clarification, and I think that Councilor Cumby's comment made me think of this. Certainly from the staff standpoint, and Assistant City Manager Fieser and I have talked about this a lot, our goal is to help our landlord community move toward compliance with these habitability standards that you've set. But I think, and so Councilor Cumby, as you've suggested, there certainly are alternatives to egress window recognized in the building codes adopted by the state and thereby by the city, and also in codes that have not been adopted by the state nor city, such as the International Residential. Those are things like, you know, that we all are aware of, like sprinkler systems, right? Or like you've said, and we've heard from some of the public speakers, an alternative way to a location for a ladder, something like that. So there are other ways to gain safety out of a sleeping room in a dwelling unit. But I think also we would all be naive if we think that every single thing, every single space that's rented as a dwelling unit in Laramie, that there's always going to be a solution. One of the things Todd and I have talked about is it is entirely possible that there are some places that are being rented and people are living in that there won't be a final workable solution. Now, we think that is by far the vast minority of all of the dwelling units rented in this town, but it's entirely possible that you know, there may be physical constraints or reasons that certain places aren't able to be rented in the future. But we do think that that will be a vast minority of all of the dwelling units.
Councilmember Somerville.
Thank you, Mayor, for a second question. City Manager, kind of just since we're on the topic of addressing the issues that we've heard around this, in addition to potentially giving this extension, has there been any discussion about any role the city could have or should have in trying to develop some financial tools for property owners to potentially make these improvements to meet the code?
Through you, Mayor and Councilor Somerville, no. We've had no conversation of cost sharing at this point in time. We have some 18,000 units already registered, and we do know of landlords who have already made modifications to their property. So from a staff standpoint, at least, we are not to the point yet where we're thinking about recommending financial cost sharing with these properties. Doesn't mean that as we learn more and we get more information that, you know, that might not become a ripe conversation that staff would bring to you in the future.
Thank you.
Councilmember O'Doherty.
I was wondering if the staff could provide or a list of contractors that do egress windows. I know the price that we heard at the last meeting was very high, but that gentleman does really high-end remodels. I've said before, I've done one for less than 1,000, but that was a few years ago. But I know there are kits that are about 1,500. So if people had a list of licensed contractors who do egress windows, I think it would be helpful, and they could get quotes that may sound more reasonable. Thank you.
Honorable Mayor, through you to Councilor Doherty, the staff has compiled that list and has provided those names as requested. And we do keep all of our licensed contractors listed on the website for review too.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, Council, I'll make a comment about this. I know that most of us here on the council are committed to this ordinance meeting its goals, and I think that the council also understands that part of that is taking input and taking practical steps to ensure that it does. And I see this as an effort toward that end, and I'm going to support it. And hopefully we, by providing this additional time and space for people to make some decisions and do some planning, we're taking some steps towards the successful implementation of this and allowing people to make some plans and make some decisions about how they're going to provide that level of rental housing that we've committed to here in the community. Seeing no other comments or questions, I'll call on the city clerk to do a roll call vote.
Mayor, did you want to do public comment on this item?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we had, but you're right. We have not. It's a little bit of a blend. Thank you, city clerk. We'd like to recognize, council would like to recognize Brett Glass. Let Mr. Glass into the room.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I would just like to echo what Councilor Cumby said regarding making it explicit in this resolution before it's passed that the city manager would have discretion to look at alternative solutions. Right now, there's nothing in there that does so. I'm wondering if I could possibly, I can't obviously make a motion. I'm wondering if it's possible that before we go, before it goes to a vote, if it might be possible for one of the councilors to propose a friendly amendment to that effect. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Glass. Other public comment? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment period. Council, questions or comments? City Manager, I have a question for you. Do you have the space as our administrator to explore some options to find solutions with rental property owners moving forward, or do we need to take a look at language?
Mayor, I think what I was alluding to is as we explore that third category, where the sticking points are, we may identify potential alternatives. And if we do, we will bring those back to you for ordinance change. I appreciate the suggestion of, or the consideration of maybe additional latitude to myself and staff who will administer this ordinance. But I think at this time, the habitability standards are clear in terms of what is considered to be a habitable rental. If we find alternative equivalence compliance options going forward, then that will be our job to come back to you with suggested modifications. And the one thing we hear is cost, and I will say from an administrative standpoint, that is not something that we will take into account, but if there are other ways to achieve compliance and safety, we'll bring it back for an ordinance modification and let you make the decision on whether it is suitable.
Thank you, City Manager. City Attorney, from the perspective of the City Attorney's Office, are there any issues with this approach of the extended timeline that the council might want to be aware of that we haven't considered so far? Does opening up the timeline?
Say this, Mayor, I can't foresee, I mean, I like this approach that's been developed by staff, and I support it. I can't see every possible permutation well enough to be able to answer that question. But I think, as the city manager says, if there becomes implementation problems, we come back to council. I mean, it's clear that this is something new in this city. It's something that council wants. But bringing that all together, there's just, in the details, we're going to discover things that we don't know. And I think we can, deal with them. But no, I can't. I support this. And if there are big issues, we'll be back in front of council.
Thank you. It's a reasonable answer to what I know is a hard question, but I think we have to ask those kinds of questions sometimes in our process. Vice Mayor Pierce.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. We have been talking about this issue for 3 years or almost 3 years now. We have an ordinance that is incredibly kind by comparison to other communities in this nation. And I don't know how much kinder we could possibly be from my perspective. And I'm not going to support this because if we have somebody in a basement apartment and they can't get out of that sleeping area, then that's a problem and it needs to be fixed. And it should have been fixed last week, last year, the year before, the year before, the year before. So I'm not supporting this. I think, like I said, we've been too kind and we have been, that's all I really am just going to say. Enough is enough from my perspective.
Other comments or questions on this topic? All right, council, seeing no further questions or comments. City Clerk, thank you earlier for your reminder about following procedure, but let's have a roll call vote now.
Cumby. Sorry, Cumby?
No.
Gabriel?
Yes.
Somerville?
Yes.
O'Doherty?
Yes.
Harrington?
Yes.
Schmeckel?
Yes.
Schuster?
No.
Pierce?
No.
Weaver?
Yes.
That's 6 yeses and 3 noes, Your Honor.
That motion carries. Which now takes us to the next item on our agenda. Item number 19, I'd like to call on. Oh, no. I don't have someone for number 19. Please remind me, Council, who wanted it? 19. Yes.
Mayor, if I could just interrupt really quick. According to your rules of procedure, due to the executive session, we do have to vote by 2/3 vote to extend the meeting past 9 o'clock to address an additional item. So if you wouldn't mind addressing that, that'd be great.
Is there a motion to extend the time so we can get to the council business that's necessary this evening, Councilmember Harrington?
Mr. Mayor, I would move to suspend the rule and extend the meeting past 9 o'clock to finish this item.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Gabriel. And I think you were trying to make that motion there too, but I think it has to be that exact wording for our rules. So second from Councilmember Gabriel, thank you very much. All those in favor say aye, raise your hand, whichever you're comfortable with. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Councilmember Gabriel, did I hear you reminding me that you were going to introduce this item?
Yes.
Thank you, and I apologize. Councilmember Gabriel, please.
I move to approve resolution 2022-72, confirming city manager's power to manage access to city streets and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign.
Second.
Second from Councilmember Somerville. All right, so we've got background from the city attorney. Thank you.
Yes, it's me again, Your Honor.
Can I jump in here? Point of order, which I think was where Councilor Harrington was going. Don't we actually have to have a vote? Or do we know for sure we had 2/3 of our hands raised to extend the meeting?
The mayor did proceed, assuming that we had 2/3 vote. If the council wanted to call to question the vote, we could certainly do a roll call on that, but it's,
Well, I had seven yes votes on the screen, which would be over the 2/3 threshold.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I didn't see 7, so thank you.
All right, point of order addressed. City Attorney, thank you very much. Sorry about that. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
That's fine. As the cover sheet says, our city manager with staff, with professional staff, worked up and implemented a right-of-way access policy in February 2021 to standardize management of access to city streets from private property. This resolution confirms and adopts the city manager's power to create such policies and manage such policies, and to manage access to city streets from private property generally. And if her policy is amended or altered, that amendment or alteration, once done, will be sent to City Council for your review.
Questions? Seeing no questions, we'll see if there's public comment. We'll recognize Mr. Van Fleet. Mr. Van Fleet, you have the floor.
Your Honor and Council, I would encourage you to deny or this particular resolution. And the reason being is I don't think that as elected officials that you should be giving away or abrogating your duties to the city manager, especially when we're talking about constitutional issues such as the constitutional right to access to public roads and incarceration. This resolution or this policy was enacted by posting it on a website and stating that if somebody violated it, they could go to jail for 10 days and pay a $750 fine. Last time I checked, that was legislation, and the ordinance 112.090 requires that all legislation be done by an ordinance, and only a license may be granted by resolution. When we're talking about jailing our citizens for driving down a road, I think that we probably need to do this by a full ordinance process and not a resolution. You should be allowing responses in the public forum for public comment. You should not allow the city manager the authority through her or her staff to put somebody in jail. And I understand there will be a process that I'm sure will get clarified at some point that this is going to go through the municipal court. But the point being is every other resolution that this city passes, if you look over the last 5 years, none of them involve instances where somebody could be jailed. When we talk about modifying a jailable criminal offense we talk about an ordinance and a law. This is poorly drafted. The right-of-way policy states that no person, agency, business, or entity shall construct or use any access point, public or private, providing vehicular movement to or from the city of Laramie right-of-way without an approved access agreement. This means, based on the language of this, if somebody's coming to see a game in the city of Laramie and they don't live in the city, they technically need a access agreement. Now, I understand that that's probably not the intent of the agreement, but because it's so poorly written, as the city's private counsel admitted to today in court, it cannot be passed. We already have 3 pending lawsuits. Why, if there's 3 pending lawsuits to decide if this is even constitutional, will the city council now take the egregious step of passing this as a resolution? I would encourage you to shoot down, disapprove, whatever you want to do there. Do not approve this resolution. It's poorly drafted, it's vague. Please read it before you move forward, because I think you will find that one of the intents of this policy, as it's stated, is not to interfere, abrogate, or annul any legally recorded easement. And I already represent one client where that's exactly the case. We have an easement access, and the city is telling us my client has to apply for an access easement, or he's going to go to jail or be fined. So I would encourage you to shoot this down. It is not appropriate at this time. There are 3 pending litigations. Let the court do its process. Thank you.
Public comments open. Seeing no further public comment requests, we'll return it to the council for questions and comments. Councilmember O'Doherty.
I have a question. It seems like driveway access to roads is restricted. Like I can't just put limitless driveways onto Grand Avenue because it's convenient for me. I don't see how this is different to expect a right of way to abide by. Like there's a planning department, and there's streets that are built for a certain capacity, and when things are changed to not take that into account, I assume that's why we need this process. Thank you.
Other questions and comments? Further questions or comments? Seeing none. City Clerk, we have a roll call vote.
Gabriel,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Somerville,
No.
Schuster,
No.
Schmeckel,
No.
Humby,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 6 yeses and 3 noes, Your Honor.
The motion carries. Takes us into public comments on non-agenda items. Seeing no requests for public comments on non-agenda items, we'll close the public comment period. And open number 21. Consideration of future council work session topics and upcoming meetings. Any council input on those items? All right. I see some council exhaustion and decision fatigue across my screen, my friends. I'll call on Councilmember Schuster for item number 22.
Thank you. I move we adjourn to executive session, Wyoming State Statute 16-4-405, small letter A, Roman numeral 3.
Second.
A motion from Councilor Schuster for what I suspect will be the last time. A second from Councilmember Schmeckel. We are adjourned to executive session. If you'll raise your hand.